And welcome to Conversations. My name is Jason Plotkin, and what we're going to do today is continue our conversations. Every week we try to bring in people from the community, the congregation, or perhaps even the sports world to talk about things that are impacting our community, things we want to talk about as a congregation or more. So this week I'm really excited. We have Jackie Fisherman from the Jewish Federation, as well as Taryn Baranowski from the Federation. And we're going to start off, we're going to bring them onto our interview today, and we're going to start off by introducing them and learning about their roles at the Federation so that we can learn what the Federation's doing, what these two individuals are doing, and how we as a community can benefit from the Federation's resources. So Taryn, Jackie, come on our show if you don't mind. And we're going to start off. Taryn, if you don't mind telling us a little about you and what you do and what your responsibilities are at the Federation.
Sure. So I'm lucky enough to have been at the Federation since about mid-March 2017, just a few months before Harvey. My official title is Chief Marketing Officer, but I do a lot of communications work. I help us raise awareness around the work of the Federation and its importance to Houston's Jewish community, and serve as a part of the senior leadership team.
All right, and Jackie?
Hi, well, first, thank you so much for having us on today. I really love seeing all the innovative programming that our institutions are doing during this time to keep everybody's minds at ease. And I think our response has been incredible. I'm Jackie Fisherman. I'm the Director of Government Affairs at the Federation, which is a relatively new position, helping with crisis management and response.
Fantastic. So before we dive deep into some of the key areas I'd like to touch on, maybe Taryn, can you share a little bit about the Federation and what its role is in the Houston Jewish community for those who may not know?
Yeah. And most likely your congregants and the other folks watching may or may not be familiar with the Federation. The Federation is an important part of Jewish life in Houston. Most communities in the Houston area, or in the world, have a Jewish Federation that had been seen primarily as a fundraising arm for the community in times of disaster. And just each and every year we provide funding to support the JCC, to support 7 Acres, to support Jewish Family Service, as well as other local institutions and institutions in Israel. But the Federation's really evolving, and we're no longer just the fundraising arm. We're really the community convener who brings together different parts of the Jewish community to share resources, to share best practices, to help with trainings, and to really be the place that's a central address of the Jewish community, no matter what denomination you are, or even if you're not affiliated. We hope that, you know, the Federation touches your life in some way.
So to expand on that, you know, we have a new executive director here at our Jewish Federation, Carrie Saratovsky. She's really been trying to, like you said, bring people together, right? So, and she's been very active, very busy meeting with people in the community. Tell us some of the goals that she set out organizationally and for this community.
Yeah, I think that she's really leading the charge to have the community shape, you know, how the Federation shows up in people's lives. It's, you know, you have people who have long histories of being affiliated with the Federation and have done great things, but we've expanded on our engagement pieces. In the past, since Carrie started in the end of 2019, we've expanded our engagement piece. We now offer family volunteer services, where it's a program called Schools Out Help Out, where on days when parents are out of school with their children, we as a Jewish community find ways to give back, whether it be through the food bank or through helping clean up parks, because we all know that, you know, giving back in Tikkun Olam is part of what it means to be Jewish. And so Carrie is really looking for ways that people can select to be involved with the Federation, ways that they can look to make a difference in this Jewish community. And so we've started those efforts under her leadership. She's been here about 6 months. Obviously, with our current situation, like all organizations, we're evaluating what that means. We still want people to be involved and engaged with the Federation. And just about a week ago, during the Holocaust Remembrance Day, we hosted a Holocaust survivor online, and 160 people were able to hear her story in a situation similar to this. And, you know, it's important for us to connect people to their Judaism and to connect them in ways that they themselves can repair the world. And so we are, you know, we're really looking at how we do that during these unprecedented times.
You concluded by talking about connecting. And I think as Jewish professionals in the Jewish world, we realize that relationship building is really critical to our engagement. Now, Jackie, I know you've been, since you've hit the ground running in your role, have been able to build some relationships both within the Jewish community and beyond. Kind of explain some of the stuff you're doing in your role as it relates to networking and engaging people.
Sure. So Director of Government Affairs is a relatively new role that was I was hired on in late October. And it was really established after Harvey, recognizing that having a seat at the table and community connections prior to a disaster is much more preferable than trying to build that plane while flying it during a disaster situation. So since I've started, I've been working really hard to introduce myself to stakeholders within the Jewish community and outside. I've been building connections at the federal, county, and local level with our city council. And the goal is really to ensure that we have a coordinated effort and that, I mean, as we always say, like, you know, luck favors the prepared. We hope that by having all of this in advance, we're better positioned for the next disaster. We just didn't anticipate that this disaster would materialize so quickly and in the form of a worldwide pandemic.
I appreciate that. And now, you know, let's switch over to talking about JRAN. I think some in the Jewish community have seen that acronym, have seen it associated with the Federation, and now we're in a moment where JRAN is active and contributing to the community. What is JRAN for those who've never heard about it, have only seen the acronyms, and how did it come to be?
Sure. The Federation established the Jewish Response and Action Network, or as we call JRAN, to take a collaborative approach to emergency management so that the Jewish community can continue to be at the forefront of crisis management, as we've seen ourselves in the past, obviously most recently with Hurricane Harvey. And we know that while we cannot anticipate what the next emergency will be, we can definitely do our best to prepare, to respond, and to be ready to act when something does happen.
And to kind of add on to that a little bit, you know, JRAN in and of itself is, you know, a community of all, you know, as many of the Jewish institutions in Houston that want to be. We think there's about 48 members right now. We get people added to it every time we send something out. But it represents, you know, anything from a synagogue to BBYO to, you know, the different JFS and JCC. So it consists of membership bodies, the different Jewish institutions. And Jackie, I'll brag on her for a minute. She's done an amazing job sharing resources. She watches all the briefings every day on a state and local level and really want to let the organizations, the Jewish organizations within our community, make the decisions that are in their best interest for their students, for their congregants, for their families that they serve, and really trying to be that centralized source of information so that the individual boards and professional staff can make those decisions that they need to.
So you explained there that JRAN is doing a few things, sending out things for the congregations, for the organizations. What exactly are you learning during these? You're watching all these various sessions and briefings. What is it specifically you're sharing with the congregations and organizations from these briefings?
So there's two goals, as Taryn mentioned. The first goal is to make sure that our congregations and our institutions are informed with a Jewish-focused lens, and also very hyper-local. Everything I share is usually either state of Texas or city of Houston focused, or Harris County. Occasionally I'll bring in national information when it is applicable to our community. And always with a Jewish lens, ensuring that our Jewish institutions have the information they need to make decisions to move forward. We also are offering resources. So prior to COVID-19 or the coronavirus being declared a worldwide pandemic, we had actually activated the JRAN network and hosted an in-person and Zoom meeting with Dr. Ed Septimus, who's an infectious disease expert with Memorial Hermann. And he helped brief our leaders of each institution on what we can expect when a pandemic is declared and steps that we will probably have to take. And we ended up giving every single institution a hard copy and a Word document of a pandemic response plan so they can adapt it to their own organizations. So that was before the pandemic started. And now that we've been knee deep in COVID-19 for the past couple of months, when the federal government passed the stimulus package called the CARES Act, in it was the Paycheck Protection Program. And we really focused on ensuring that our institutions had the expertise and the banking resources necessary to apply and take advantage of the forgivable loan program so that they can continue to operate without as much worry over how they can pay their employees for the next 8 weeks. We convened a network of lawyers and CPAs to give pro bono advice, and we also helped connect people to local banks when they were having trouble with their current institutions. And I think that's one of the most essential programs we've done recently during this pandemic, is helping to make sure our Jewish institutions were financially stable for the time being.
And it's really fascinating. We can say Emmanuel has taken advantage of this program, and the Jewish Federations of North America were an integral part of communicating out to Jewish organizations. I know the URJ was very involved with some of what it was doing, but it was just neat to see all these organizations come together and help the institutions out navigate this process, which was very confusing and complex. Hopefully, everyone will take advantage of it who hasn't had a chance now that they've extended more monies. But thank you from Emmanuel and from the other agencies to all the National Jewish Federation of North American partners for their role. Let's talk about institutions, Emmanuel, other institutions in the community. What are the biggest needs, and we can talk about individuals as well, what are the biggest needs the Federation is seeing as it relates to this current pandemic? What are the biggest challenges that you guys see even in the weeks ahead coming out of this once we get to whatever the new normal is?
Do you want me to take this one, Jackie? Okay. So the easy and hard answer is the way that this situation has developed is people don't know. Right? People, because it is going longer than people anticipated, because it happened so quickly, it feels like we don't know. So we have done a community survey from the partner institutions, but we did it a couple weeks ago, and things have even changed since then. So biggest concern, both as for individuals as well as organizations, is financial insecurity. Depending on how long it goes, depending on what happens, depending on whether or not summer camps open, people don't know how much it's going to impact, but we do anticipate a financial impact both on individuals within our Jewish community as well as organizations. We've been working closely with JFS. We know that their calls have increased. They're part of the United Way helpline. Their calls have increased 60%. In the past 6 weeks. We know that they've had requests from more than 100 families for assistance, and we anticipate that number going up. We also know that they're at capacity for mental health services, because with financial insecurity, with close quarters that we all find ourselves in, come challenges with mental health for people who, experience anxiety and depression regularly, and for folks even who maybe have not. And so they're looking, and we're working with them to see, we have launched a COVID emergency appeal from the Federation. Our first initial goal is $5 million, and those dollars we're anticipating going to people first. We think that you should put people first in an emergency. And so we're looking and working with JFS. We will have an allocations process. We have, I'm proud to report, crossed the $1 million threshold in that fundraising campaign. And if people are looking for a way to help, I would encourage them to look at our website and to visit our COVID page. That is one way to help. We also, as a federation, are continuing with our annual campaign And, because we're the convener, because we're seen as the fundraiser, we know that families need financial assistance, and we're going to do everything we can to help provide that. And that's really our first step. But we're going to continue to communicate with our organizations, continue to communicate with JFS and other partner organizations, because depending on what happens in the local, state, and national level, it depends on how we are going to need to be agile enough to respond directly to those circumstances.
Nice. And Jackie, did you have anything to add, or is she a home run hitter right there?
Obviously, Taryn's always a home run hitter.
There we go.
At least a standard double.
Yeah. Always with that sports analogies. My apologies. So, we've talked about the current pandemic. Let's flex to hurricane season. Unfortunately, here in Houston, we know hurricanes, we know flooding as well as anybody in the country. What lessons did we learn from Harvey, the previous floods that impacted our city previously, that kind of set the tone for JRAN and what has become as the Federation's role?
Sure. The big lesson after Harvey was really having a seat at the table in advance. It was incredibly difficult to play catch up from the Federation's side during the crisis. And so, the city was triaging, we were triaging, and we were trying to build relationships at the same time. And which is why the Federation and why Carrie really saw the role as a Director of Government Relations as an important part as we move forward the Federation's future vision. As we've seen in the current crisis, having these relationships in place, and the fact I wasn't given a lot of time to build relationships. I started at the very end of October, just reminding people. But having a lot of those relationships in place has really been integral. It allows us to better focus on connecting needs to services rather than trying to figure out both ends at the same time. And it helped when the first cases of COVID-19 was in the Jewish community. And I know Taryn can probably speak a little bit more about how we, all of our roles were a bit nimble during that time in trying to respond and manage what we thought could potentially be a crisis. But we also were using our connections within the city of council to try to get this person tested. It was really hard to get a test at the time, but we were able to have the relationships we had in place were helping us to move forward in a way that I don't know if we could have without having established those, even though it was a short amount of time.
Very good. And then a follow-up back to the Harvey and the floods. I think what's really neat as a Jewish professional is it seems there's more cohesion in the community, if you will, as it relates to knowing what each entity in the community, what they can provide. God forbid if we have another Hurricane Harvey situation, right? I know there were steps being taken prior to the current pandemic to really prepare for the coming hurricane season. Can you explain some of these partnerships? I know you brought in an organization from Israel as well. Can you elaborate on some of those things for people who may not be familiar with these?
Sure. So beginning last November, we were setting up what would ultimately become JRAN. And we were asking organizations to participate in a community mapping conversation with our Israeli crisis partner, IsraAid. So we started with a group of 12 organizations, and in December, IsraAid came and interviewed each organization, and each organization was different. We had some of the institutions, some of the schools, and some of the congregations involved, and we were really focusing on lessons learned from Hurricane Harvey and then asset mapping. Who has what, who needs what, and how can we connect the two together? And then as we started to build off of the Harvey resiliency piece, we also were looking at security concerns, especially after the horrific attacks in New York and New Jersey in late 2019. And so we began folding in security into natural disasters because it seemed like a good fit and a lot of staff overlap. And then once we received notice of the pandemic and the possibility that would have reached Houston, in February, we shifted the whole focus of JRAN to the possible outbreak of COVID-19 in our area. And the timing was spot on. As I mentioned before, we were able to provide our organizations with at least a week's notice, a little over a week's notice before, we started to see the county and city implement the stay home orders and things to keep us safe, and allowed our organizations to start to think about, what they needed to do to work at home and what technology needs they would need to have and what would happen when schools close. And I think giving a little bit of notice, even with a hurricane, is really a huge advantage than having to react in real time.
Thank you. And then lastly, I'm a PR professional. I get it. I want to make sure that Taryn has an opportunity to share some of the resources that the community at large has an ability to take advantage of that they might not be aware of. And did you know the Federation does have a new website as well? But Taryn, the floor is yours. Please share with us the resources that are available through the Federation to anyone in the community, virtually or otherwise.
No, thank you for that, and I appreciate that. Yes, during this whole thing, we also launched our Federation website. We actually moved it up just a couple of weeks and had some late nights. So it is a modern website. The old website hadn't been redesigned in over a decade, so a little bit different technology. And that website is much more streamlined. We're going to use it to tell the story of the Federation a little bit differently. But one of the most important things on the website, if you go to houstonjewish.org, there's an orange band right at the top of the website that will link you to COVID resources. Jackie's done an amazing job of collecting these resources for people. Some of them are helpful to the organizations and some of them are helpful to individuals. So we have things ranging from, unemployment information with the Texas Workforce Commission to activities that families can do together as we get ready to celebrate Israel's anniversary, its 72nd birthday on Wednesday this year. So those resources are great. You can also see Jackie's emails that she sends out to Jewish institutions. They are cataloged on there. There's a whole chart or an interactive matrix where you can select the different tabs and get to those resources. So we encourage anyone who has questions to look there first. We are looking at how we can, really make sure that our Jewish community stays connected and stays informed, because during a crisis, and especially one that keeps us so disconnected physically, the most key information piece is to have access to information, right? People want information. They want, we find that parents don't necessarily want more things to do, but they want information that is helpful for them as they're making decisions on their to their families. And so that's what we're trying to do with that page, and I think we're accomplishing it. And I encourage anyone, if you have any questions, Jackie and I are available. You can get a hold of us, and our email address is on the website, and we're both happy to answer any questions and appreciate everybody, and what they're going through right now.
Well, that is fantastic. That's a great way to close. Again, if you need resources from the Federation, houstonjewish.org. For those in the Emmanuel community or beyond who are interested in what we're doing, obviously emmanuelhouston.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, of course, the website that I mentioned, all very helpful. Again, thank you to Jackie, thank you to Taryn for coming on to Conversations. We'll announce our next guest in the coming days, but we're really excited. This is our second show. Every Wednesday at noon on the Emmanuel Facebook page and on the Emmanuel website. Special thanks to David Tanner for his work behind the scenes. I apologize if my co-host Sammy the cat got involved and you might have heard her at some points. Again, Conversations Wednesdays at noon on the Emmanuel website and on our Facebook page. Thank you everybody for joining us and have a great day.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks.